Hello, my name is Stephanie, and I'm here to talk to y'all about cancer. I need to make a few disclaimers first. Number one, I'm not a health professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I've never been to medical school. So you may say, okay, well, why are you talking to us about cancer? Well, first of all, both of my parents have had it, and most importantly, I've had it as well. So, there. Next, I want to say up front that I have absolutely no clue whatsoever in terms of what I'm doing on making this video. And I'm sure that will come to light very soon. I'm here by myself doing it, so there'll probably be a lot of starting and stopping, so good luck with that. And lastly, you may think I'm a little off kilter or what have you, but the chemotherapy did not do that to me. I've always been this way. I mean, you can ask my loved ones and they will attest to that. So let's get started. Okay, before I begin telling you more about my story, I wanted to talk to you first a little bit about cancer in general. And let's first of all start by doing word association. For instance, when I say the word cancer, what thoughts come to mind, like whether it's an image or a term. Just see if you can name 5, and y'all do that right now while I wait. Okay, did y'all come up with some things? Well, let me tell you some of the thoughts that I used to have before my family and myself had cancer. The first thing that would come to my mind or pop up in my head would be an image of a bald person, a bald woman. The next thing would be seeing someone just deathly sick. I thought of terms like chemotherapy, radiation, remission, survivor. Often, I think of the different ribbons. And these awareness ribbons don't necessarily have to do with cancer, but that's what I thought. And the same goes with the awareness bracelets. Just because someone's wearing a bracelet doesn't mean it has to do with cancer. It can be some other cause, but again, that was my thoughts. People have a lot of misconceptions about cancer, and they seem to stereotype people who've had it or have it. And that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about. Just because someone has to take chemotherapy doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to lose their hair. They may. It depends on the type of cancer they have and the type of chemotherapy that's administered. So, and the other thing is, if they do lose their hair, it will grow back. See? This is a picture of me without hair, and if you look, this is real, and it came back. So it's all good. Another thing is, like, if you see someone really, really sick, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get better necessarily. I remember one day I was with my mom in the early days of her chemotherapy, and there was a young guy. He was in his late teens, early 20s, and oh my gosh, he looked sick, and I was just like, oh, poor thing. And a few months later, I saw this really handsome guy in the doctor's office, and I was like asking the nurse, well, who's that? And they were like, well, that's so-and-so, and that just floored me. Okay, one thing that I need to mention is a crazy notion. Cancer is not contagious. Repeat, not contagious. Sometimes people almost treat you as if you do have a disease they can catch. They don't know how to approach you. They don't know what to say. And it's like their solution is, well, I'll just come back and see them when they feel better. And I just can't tell you how hurtful that is to someone. And but it's literally not possible to catch cancer. And you need to show your loved ones or friends or whoever has it that you're there for them and you care about them. And if they want to talk about it, let them talk about it. If they want to get their mind off of it, do that as well. Okay, did you know that there are over 200 different types of cancer? I didn't. It turns out that we're all probably familiar with some of the more common ones, like skin, lung, breast, thyroid, colon. But one thing that you may not be aware of is that with each particular type of cancer, there are subtypes. For instance, there are different types of breast cancer. There's different forms of lung cancer. And one example, there's a type of lymphoma, which is cancer of the lymph nodes, that is called Hodgkin's disease. So there's like a Hodgkin's and a non-Hodgkin's. And there are over 60 types of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I mean, that just blew me away. So the moral of this story is that there's always more to it. Just because someone has lung cancer, there's probably a certain type. And with certain type, have different treatment options. So not only do you have the different types of cancer, you have, and the subtypes, you have different grades. Something can be like low grade, or intermediate, or high grade. And what that means is like how aggressive the cancer cells are changing, and the potential of spread. So again, each person's journey with their cancer diagnosis is very specific to them. So you can't just stereotype everybody that you hear has skin cancer this way. So it's important to understand that and be cognizant of some of the things that they may be going through. Okay, so you have the different types of cancers, then you have the different subtypes, and like we mentioned, the different grades. But there's also staging, and what that is where they determine if the cancer has spread from its original site or not. And you've got 5 stages, but it starts at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0 is the best case scenario. That means that they've caught it early, and there might be a lot of treatment options available, and there might even be the option of wait and see. Sometimes doing something may be more hurtful to the individual than just watching it and keeping an eye on it. Then like stage 4 would be the worst case scenario in terms of the disease has gone beyond where it had begun. For instance, if you had breast cancer, if it's in your liver, it's not called liver cancer, it's called metastasized breast cancer. And that's a very serious situation. And just because someone has stage 4 cancer, it doesn't mean that they should give up all hope. For instance, do you watch Dancing with the Stars? Valerie Harper, who just got eliminated, had lung cancer. And that lung cancer had metastasized to her brain. And yet there she is, just having the best time. I mean, she knows this is a very life-threatening situation, but she's not stopped living. And that's something that's so important, is to, if someone has cancer and in their fight for it, not only are they trying to do everything they can to treat it and fight it off, but they're also trying to live and enjoy life. So it's important to not question somebody, and it's not a bucket list. It's just like living. You got to enjoy life while you can. And for me personally, my mom has been stage 4 colon cancer patient for going on 6+ years. She was diagnosed over 10 years ago, but it's spread for a number of years. And since then, she's traveled the world. She's gotten her scuba diver's license, and I mean, just nothing stopped her. So again, sort of like Valerie Harper, my mom, do what you do it to enjoy it, and don't stop living. Okay, another thing about cancer that's very important to understand is it's an equal opportunity disease. It doesn't care how old you are, whether you're really young or old. It doesn't care if you're male or female. It could care less what your race is or your religious preference, whether you're rich or poor. So in other words, we can all potentially be affected by this horrible disease. So that's one of the reasons it's so important to talk about it, to spread awareness. Through opening up dialogue and talking about things, it helps bring it to the attention of someone. It's so important to understand the early signs and symptoms of certain types of cancers, to understand what your risk is, whether it's in your family, to understand the importance of maintaining a healthy lifestyle, proper nutrition, exercise, and also to understand what's normal for you. And that's how I discovered my cancer, is something didn't seem right. My mom was first diagnosed with cancer in 2003, so it was a little over 10 years ago. And at the time, I tried to learn everything I possibly could about colon cancer, tried to understand the treatment options, both conventional as well as alternative. Conventional treatments would be stuff like surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. Alternative treatments could be something like acupuncture. So whatever it took, I was determined to get us through this, because at the time they had given my mom less than 20% chance of living beyond 5 years. So, a line was drawn in the sand, and we were just going to fight this thing. So my dad was consequently diagnosed with cancer a few years later, and we had done well with Mama. She was still just really, really sick. And I just did the same thing with him. I'm like, we're going to get through this. We can do it. So not only was I trying to, cheer my parents on, I was also trying to take care of myself. So as a healthy young adult, I made sure I had a baseline mammogram as well as colonoscopy, since colon cancer runs in the family. And it turns out breast cancer did, but it was distant relatives, like great aunts, that type of thing. So I thought I was doing everything right. I was taking care of my parents, cheering them on. I was commuting back and forth from where I live in South Carolina to their home in North Carolina. I was having to work. My husband was crazy busy at the time, and just, it was just hard on everyone. And I'm sure you've heard of breast self-examinations. It's where you make sure there's nothing that's out of kilter, and you look for changes. And I'm not going to say I was diligent about doing that every month or so. After you get over a certain age, like 20 or so, they like for you to do that. Y'all are young enough that your bodies are continually undergoing changes. Well, as you get older, you want to be on the lookout for things like nipple discharge, not milk, lumps, dimples, asymmetry, just things that just don't seem right. Well, I don't know when exactly I had noticed, but I found a small BB-like dot spot on my boob. And it didn't hurt. And I would be watching TV, and I would just be, it was almost, at first I thought it was a zit or a bump. And so I would just, messing with it. And then it dawned on to me. I'm like, Stephanie, you are the biggest hypocrite if you don't go to the doctor and get this thing checked out. One of the problems for my mom is she had been having problems for quite some time and would refuse to go to the doctor. And it's a bad situation. Had she gone to the doctor when she noticed symptoms and was having problems, she would be in a totally different situation than she is now. But none of us can change that. And so again, I was like, I need to go to the doctor and do the right thing. So I went to go see, I'd been going to this doctor for probably 10, 15 years at least. And he said, Stephanie, don't worry about it. It's a cyst. A cyst is a fluid-filled sac, and they're fairly common. And I was like, okay. But I said, I did find out, after my mom's been through all this, I've had some great aunts that have had breast cancer. He goes, you're too young. So I said, okay. He said, come back to see me in a few months when your regular exam is scheduled. Okay, here's another crazy side of my story. I was up at my parents' and I had dropped my mom off at chemo, and she gets really sick when they were giving it to her, so they give her something to make her sleep, so she's knocked out during the worst part of it. And I was at home getting ready to go back and get her, and I had one of their doggies on my lap, Charlie. And he's a small dog, but he all of a sudden just looked at me, and he craned his neck and he put his nose directly on top of this spot. And I mean, he had to work to get there. And then he raised his eyes and just looked at me, and it was like an intense stare. And he's a very serious dog too. So I said, are you trying to tell me something? And then it was like in the back of my head, I'm like, well, what if he is trying to tell me something? I don't know if y'all have heard, but there are things going around that dogs have the ability to smell cancer. They help people if they can sense, like, if a seizure's coming on and if your blood sugar's low. So I was like, I should do something about this. So another time I was up helping my mom. I dropped her off at treatment, and I had convinced myself I'm going to go have another mammogram and just make sure everything's okay. I was a little bit nervous about it because my doctor had already said it's nothing, and I convinced them to, they checked with the doctor's office, and they let me have one, and they couldn't find anything. And I started to cry, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to think I've wasted all their time. But they said because it's palpable, and palpable means you can feel it, and the technician was able to feel it, I had an ultrasound. And an ultrasound, it was able to detect an abnormality. And I convinced him, I said, listen, I live out of town, I'm just here to help my mom, take a biopsy right now, just do it, get it over with. And so they did. So about a week later, after the biopsy, the doctor, the same one that originally told me it was a cyst, called me up and said, so Stephanie, I see you decided to go ahead and have a mammogram. And I thought he was calling to fuss at me, like, I told you it was a cyst. But he said, just really bluntly, well, it's a good thing you did because you've got breast cancer. He says, actually, you have two types. He said, you have invasive ductal carcinoma, and you also have, it appears to be some ductal carcinoma in situ. And what that means is ductal is the milk duct that's in the breast, and invasive means it had gone outside of the milk duct itself, and the in situ means that there was evidence of more cancer that hadn't escaped the milk duct yet. So that was quite a shock hearing that, to say the least. And I was extremely nervous about telling my husband. He had lost his mom to breast cancer just shortly after she turned 50. And I, of course, was extremely anxious talking to my parents. you know, they depended on me. I was helping them, and I just didn't think my mom could handle it. But we got through all that. So in terms of what all I went through in a quick nutshell, I was supposed to undergo a lumpectomy, and they were going to check to see if any of my lymph nodes had cancer in it. And then the plan was going to be to have radiation. So I did the procedure, the lumpectomy, and the good news is that it was not in my lymph nodes. It had not spread, so it was considered stage 1. And when I went back for follow-up, it turns out that they found out that not all of the margins were clear from where they took the tumor out, and that I actually had extensive in situ. So there's a lot more cancer in there that they were even able to see with their test. So they recommended me having a mastectomy. And with the mastectomy, they removed my whole breast, and I've got a scar about from here to here, and I don't have a nipple. And I had reconstruction. They put in this tissue expander to help stretch the skin. It's actually, I have part of a cadaver in my chest. I had a name for it at one point. I don't know if it was Betty or something, but anyway. And you know, it definitely looks different, and took me a long time to get used to. And sometimes I even forget until I take my clothes off, and then, that's right, forgot. So because I had the mastectomy, I wasn't going to have radiation, because theoretically the breast is removed. I should be in the clear, and I did not have any cancer in my lymph nodes. So I've had my lumpectomy, I had my mastectomy. I was determined I did not have to have radiation, so I thought I was scot-free. And when they had finished, you know, classifying everything, I was a stage 1 breast cancer with invasive ductal carcinoma. That's the cancer of the milk duct that had gone outside. And I thought I was scot-free. The grade of cancer was intermediate. It means it was more aggressive than they had anticipated. And with that, coupled with the fact that my new doctor, the oncologist, did take a family history and was asking me about stuff, and knew my mom and my dad both had cancer, she recommended I have this type of gene test. It was called an oncotype. And the results of that came back intermediate. And what that meant was that I had a higher than expected chance of it coming back. And taking that into consideration, they offered me chemotherapy. And you may say, well, why would you want to have chemotherapy? Well, it wasn't something that was an easy decision by any means. I didn't want to have chemo. I saw firsthand what it does to people, because Mama had been going through it for the past 4 years. I didn't want that. I didn't even know if I could do it. But one of the things that I kept in mind is when my husband, David, his mother also had an early stage cancer, and she was offered chemotherapy at the time. I mean, this was 20 years ago, a long time ago. And she didn't want to take the chemo. And it came back, and it had spread to her brain, and she lost her battle. And I'm thinking, I need to do this. I need to give myself every possible chance of trying to eradicate any cells that are just out and about that they don't know about. So that's when I made the decision to go ahead and do the chemotherapy as a preventative measure. So I was diagnosed when I was 39, and they were, with the timing and everything, it was going to be to start chemotherapy on my right when I turned 40 on my 40th birthday. I was like, I ain't doing that. It was traumatic enough turning 40. But it turned out with the timing that I actually started chemotherapy on Valentine's Day 2008, which was a very memorable occasion. This was actually me on my very first day of chemo. And you see, I was all happy and everything. I was just, I put on a happy front. That's all I can say. I was scared to death. But I had my mama there with me. And that's my mama. And at the time of that picture, she was stage 4 colon cancer. And in looking at her, I don't know if you can tell, she didn't look like she's got cancer. And that's how I sort of wanted to be. I didn't want people to think I was sick. And so the day before I took cancer, I decided to take an action shot of my hair as it was and my nails, because the type of chemotherapy that I was going to have had the potential of losing my hair and could make my fingernails fall off. And I know you're like, ugh, but again, I was going to do what I had to do. This is me about a week or two after my first cycle of chemotherapy. And I shaved my head. It turns out that the hair was falling out like a lot, and it got really patchy looking, and it actually ached. It's hard to explain, but my head hurt. It was where the chemotherapy was attacking a certain type of cell, the kind that regenerate quickly, which were cancer cells, but the hair cells, epithelial, were also quick to regenerate, and they were affected by the chemotherapy. And so I took pictures beforehand. This is my original hair, and I kept that. And like I say, I felt so much better once my hair was gone. I mean, that was just a huge relief. So that's another thing. When you see somebody without hair, I can't tell you physically how much better they feel without it, because it's just so painful. During the treatments and so forth, it was extremely difficult. I did feel bad a lot, and it's something that's cumulative. It means it builds up in your system. After the first treatment, I'm like, hey, I can get through this. But then the second one came around, and it was hard. I had always been pretty active, but I found it trying just to walk from my front of my house down to the end of the driveway and back. But I forced myself to do it. I was nauseated a lot, but I found that being outside and being in the sun just made me feel better. You're not supposed to be in the direct sunlight, but again, I was doing what I needed to do to make me feel better. It was hard for me to eat certain things. It's crazy. When you're undergoing treatment, I know you're supposed to think about all these nutritious things, but sometimes you got to eat what you're able to eat. And I had the crazy craving for Mexican food, specifically Mexican refried beans and rice. Don't ask me why, but it made me feel better. Same goes with the favorite beanie weenies. I don't know why, but for some reason they tasted good. I love coffee. I couldn't drink coffee. It tasted differently on my tongue. So it was something to get used to. And this went on for a few months, and I got through it. One thing that you hear people say a lot was, I could never do that. Well, one thing is so true. You don't ever know what you're capable of doing until you're put into the situation yourself. So that was a very heartfelt lesson I learned. I didn't know what I could do, but I got through it. And from my mom, what I learned is she loves travel, and she continues to do that because that's what she loves. She might feel bad and feel sick, but that's what she lives for. With me, I like to be outside. I like to run and stuff like that. That's what I enjoy. So shortly after I finished chemotherapy, I had my first road race. And you probably can't see this picture, but this was me running my first 5K, and it was one of those Komen races. And within a month of that, I ran my first half marathon. I have no clue to this day how I was able to do it. That was 13.1 miles, and I did it in just over 2 hours. So I was so proud of myself, and I'm proud of myself to this day. And again, that's something that I enjoy. Last year, I did the Avon Breast Cancer Walk for Breast Cancer in Charlotte. It was a 2-day walk that was for 39 miles. This was the end of the first day, which was 26 miles, which is a full marathon. And this was the last day at mile marker 13, and that's 39 miles. So it just makes me feel good. And also the benefit was I was raising money to help research and to help give money to women who can't afford mammograms and stuff like that. So that was very, made me feel good. And this is me and my sister-in-law. We run in the Cooper River Bridge race in Charleston, South Carolina every year. And it's a 10K, which is a little over 6 miles, and that's a lot of fun. And this is my parents. It's Mama and Daddy, and at that time they both have cancer or major issues. You can see Mama has her hair gone. And that was the first time she'd ever lost her hair, which just blows my mind. So after 7 years of chemotherapy, she finally ended up having a treatment that caused her to lose her hair. And I was able to tell her, or talk her through something that she hadn't been through, but I had. So that was special between us. And this is me and Mama on a hike in Alaska. And this is on a river trip in Alaska. And this is me and Daddy fishing. That's a salmon, and yes, I did catch that. So the reason I show you these things is that although my family's been through so much, we enjoy life, and we love to do things we love to do. Attitude is everything. It can really make or break your fight with this disease. As far as me, where I am in my fight, I just had my 6th year anniversary after being diagnosed last month. And I'm currently on medication that I will have to take at least another 5 or 6 years. I had to go through a bunch of different types to find what my body was able to handle. And I still enjoy being outside, running, doing everything I can. And it is still hard. Mentally, I am often faced with struggles. There's this one thing, hold on. It's called The Two Wolves, and it's an old Cherokee story, and it says that this chief told his grandson about the battle that goes on inside of people. He said, "My son, the battle's between two wolves, and one is evil. It has anger and envy and jealousy and sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. And the other is good. It has joy and peace and love and hope and serenity and humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." And the grandson asked his grandfather, "Well, which wolf wins?" And the Cherokee replied, "It's the one you feed." And oh my gosh, is that so true? It's like you start getting down in the dumps, and it's just like it feeds upon itself, and you feel like you're the only person in the world that is going through what you're going through. And I know it feels like that, but it's not true. There are so many others out there who've been through what you're going through and could help you through it. And your friends and family may not know what to do for you, but you have to give them a chance and tell them what you need. Be open. If you don't want to talk about something, tell them, but tell them what you do want, because they are as scared as you are, and it's such a difficult thing. One more thing. Another thing is to be thankful. I don't care what situation you're in, be thankful. It could be worse. and just fill yourself with love and laughter. We're, like I say, a very open family. We talk a lot, and it's been very helpful to me. So just in passing is happy moments, praise God. Difficult moments, seek God. Quiet moments, worship God. Painful moments, trust God. And every moment, to thank God. All right, y'all. You hopefully all have a great evening. And adios. Good grief. I had almost forgotten. Before I let you go, really, I wanted to say one more thing. I am so hopeful about my future and others who've had cancer, and I'm even enthusiastic about the prospects. There's so many breakthroughs in research. They talk about different vaccines that might help certain types of cancers. When Mama was diagnosed 10 years ago, some of the drugs that she's seeing today weren't even around. So it's just a very optimistic time, and I know that, say, in 5 years we'll be light years ahead of where we are now. So I want to spread the message of hope, and maybe this will inspire one of y'all to even consider the health field. You could save a life, and it may not be mine, and I don't have children, but it could be your child's life. So it's just so important to understand, and again, going back to awareness, be aware of these problems, and you can make a difference. All right, now you can go have fun.